Lou, back in 1964.
64. Okay. My sister Beth, who's 2 years older than me, and myself, our older sister Julia, and her husband invited us to go to Mexico for the summer. And it was right after school, so I would say, May 31st, June 1st or 2nd.
And this was your junior year?
I finished my junior year. So we drove down to Provo, and I don't remember, I guess my mom or dad or somebody, we drove to the Blairs, and they had a Volkswagen bus. And the first day we drove all the way to Santa Barbara, and we got there late at night. Maybe we did stop. I don't remember the details, but we went to Marguerite's, and she took us to a Spanish restaurant. And she was a Spanish teacher, and we had a nice meal. And then Bob showed us around his place and around Santa Barbara. And the next day we began our trek. We went from Santa Barbara to, I believe it was Arizona, and we went to Mexicali. I'm not, is that Arizona or California?
Yeah, well, anyway, you went south and then across the border.
Then we went across the border, and I just remember it was really hot.
Yeah.
And
well, it was summer.
It was summer, and it just, we didn't have air conditioning, and the heat was so horrible. I would try to get low on the ground, thinking that it would be cooler, but I just thought, man. And I always look forward to stopping and just getting out of the wagon, and I don't remember any much details about going into Mexico, but I do remember when we stopped in Mexico that Bob would always, talk in Spanish. I remember, and we'd kind of go to these villages. The one thing that I remember, we would eat the local food, but I remember one time there we were there, and there was a guy, I guess a village, and he was serenading, I guess, a woman that he liked in the village, and everybody was watching that, and that was an interesting experience to see that,
So tell about hurting your elbow. Tell about your elbow.
Oh, okay. So we went from Mexicali to Hermosillo, and then so that's a couple of days, and then we went heading towards the Pacific coast, and we went to Mazatlan, and the streets in Mazatlan are really narrow. We just had a bus that we were in, and it was, I don't know, kind of hot, so I undid the window, and I just put my elbow out, like a few inches, and another bus came and hit my elbow and bloodied me, everything. And so the bus stopped, and they took me to a hospital or clinic and cleaned me up, and I think I might have even had stitches, but I was impressed. They did a good job, and cleaning it all up, and they felt really bad that I had put my elbow out the window. So.
And then let's see, how about the Barracuda?
Oh, that was in Yucatan.
Yeah.
So it's Do you want to go there?
Well, no. If you have
Yeah,
other-
let's
other
go
stuff,
down. Okay, so we went to Mazatlan, and I thought it was a beautiful city, and the people were really friendly, and it was cooler. They had wind, went from Hermosillo to Mazatlan, and then Bob said there's this most beautiful sunset, and I guess it's Guaymas. And so we went there, and we all wanted to go in the ocean, but Bob checked it, and he said there's a riptide, and we can't go there. But I just remembered, I just thought this is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen, and I was thinking riptide, there was a song, First the Tide comes in and kisses the shore, or whatever, I was thinking of just, I guess, romantic songs and everything when he talked about riptide, and we were all disappointed that we couldn't, so we just waited in the beach at Guaymas, and I think sometimes we camped out and sometimes we stayed at some kind of a hotel. I don't really remember.
Remember the Scorpions?
Scorpions. I think that's in Yucatan.
Okay.
Yeah. So the next, from Guaymas, we went to, let's see, what's the next city after Guaymas? It's a big city.
Acapulco?
No, we didn't go to, let's see. It's one of the biggest cities in Mexico. Oh.
Well, we'll think of it.
Yeah. Oh, it's a beautiful city. I think it starts with the G.
Guadalajara.
Guadalajara. Yeah, we went to Guadalajara, and that was a beautiful city. And we stayed at a motel in Guadalajara, and I just remember that the plants and the parks and everything were just beautiful. It was an absolutely gorgeous city. And I really thought, man, let's stay here. And I remember we had the fruit, really good fruit to eat, and the people were really friendly. And Bob could talk Spanish and everything. And then from Guadalajara, we headed towards Mexico City, but there had been rain, and there was Mexico City. You kind of climb high, and I just remember it was dirty, and some of the roads were washed out, and we had to go around. It was before freeways and everything, so we kind of saw Mexico City, but we didn't really go in. We kind of went around Mexico City, and then we went from Mexico City to Puebla. And I remember we stopped in a park in Puebla, and they had a monkey and an accordion there. And I thought, this is interesting, and they also had mynah birds, and I always thought mynah birds would say, "Polly, want a crack?" or anything, but the mynah birds spoke Spanish. So that was a new one. that was their language. So we were. I bet it was more than a week going down, maybe 8 days, clear down there. So it was all pretty exciting, and it seems like from Puebla we went clear to Merida. I think I can't remember, but
yeah, that's some distance.
And we went to church, and we met the missionaries, and I remember the one was like assistant to the president, and Bob would say, "That's Hefe." Gee, I remember Hefe, and they spoke Spanish, and then he tried to find the Mayan people, and so I don't know if it was Peace Day or where, but we found a place to live, and they had a bus system in Merida, and I remember one time I took the bus and I got completely lost, and I was really scared, but somehow I explained, where the place was, and I found them, and I think Julia and
So was
Bob
that
were
when we were
scared.
in Shook and Peach?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, yeah.
So, but there, Julia and Beth were, it was quite primitive. We had hammocks, and I tried on the hammocks, and I just couldn't sleep, so I slept on the floor, and I think maybe a week into it, Julia and Beth, decided that they probably needed to go, and I had trouble sleeping in the hammock, so I slept there. And then they had scorpions, and it was really foreign. But after Julia and Bob left, Bob said, "Well, do you want to stay?" And I said, "Well, I'll stay for a little while." And then he found a place had a swimming pool. Mm-hmm. Now, did the kids go with yeah, they must have gone with Julia and Beth, so I was the one that stayed. And so I would try to practice Spanish and then swim at the pool. And so I think I stayed a week or two longer so they could figure out what to do with me. And Bob said, "Well, if you're determined to go, you can go." But he says, let's go swimming. And so he said, "There's this beautiful place called Isla Mujeres. Let's go there." And so we went, and I swam so that the ocean was, I couldn't touch, but I knew the area where I could. And we had goggles and that. And he says, "Well, let's explore." And there was a cave. And so we went down towards the cave, and there was a huge barracuda. And I was really scared. And Bob said, "That was really a barracuda." He said, "We probably better get to shore." And I was thinking that the barracuda was going to attack with had huge teeth and everything. It was right in that cave. And Bob said, don't give it any reason to attack you. Just move on. So we went back, and I really liked the place that we were staying. But ultimately, it was a foreign country. I didn't know the language, and it was hard sleeping on the floor, so, but then we kind of found a place. So he arranged for me to fly from Merida to New Orleans, and then take a train from New Orleans to, I guess, Oklahoma, or Dallas and Oklahoma, and then on to, I believe it was Pocatello.
Oh.
And then my parents picked me up. But it was during the civil rights riot. So when I arrived in New Orleans, to try to find a hotel was kind of tough, but I found one fairly cheap, and then getting a taxi to take you, to the bus station was a little bit of a challenge, because and then the train, it was when they were having the civil rights marches and everything, and New Orleans was kind of front and center. It was a, big, the people were on strike, and I remember on train, there was a place where you could eat, you know, and this one gal, I remember the last name was Hutchison. She says, you know, the black people are on strike. They won't serve you, you know, if you're white, you know. And I didn't know really what to think. I was just a 16 or 17-year-old. But it was, you know, a day or two to get back to Pocatello.
Wow.
And we did. So, do you have questions?
That's